All right. We have with us Sabrina Scholkowski. Is that right? Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
you're right.
I'm doing the thumbs up here because getting people's names right is important to me. Fortunately, I was given a very easy name, Robert Grant. So, people don't seem to have a hard time messing that one up. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Now you are on the show Pretty Sure. That's your podcast. And it's an interesting take because you incorporate that title into every episode. Like, pretty sure I shouldn't date a narcissist, for example, something along the lines there. How did you come up with this idea?
I actually have to give my mom all the credit. So it was supposed to be called something entirely different. I can't even remember the name, but
Hmm.
I think it was Instant Experience or something like that. I never really liked the name. I was just like, oh, I'm going to go with this and see what happens. And my mom was visiting me last year when I was launching my podcast. She actually got stuck over there in France with me for 2 months, which was nice, but also it's not nice to be in this tiny apartment with your mom for 2 months straight after living alone for 7 months, right? And so one day we were talking, and I was like, Mom, I don't like the name of my podcast, but I cannot for the likes of me think of anything better.
Mm,
And then she kind of said something along the lines of, oh, I'm pretty sure you're going to get it. And then something just like clicked, and I was
right.
like, wait, repeat that phrase again. And she's like, pretty sure you're going to get it. I was like, that is the name of my podcast, pretty sure. And she's
Oh,
like, okay.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'd say that we podcasters are an interesting yoke, right? We the way we see the world, we might have this extroverted shell, but I think there's a degree of introversion in all of us. This sort of, we're thinkers, right?
Yeah.
And I know with my partner, my family, they'll do things, and I'm like, hold on, just let me do what I got to do, and they're kind of like, all right, like he's in the zone. So you're kind of always in this. We're always thinking. We're always thinking of ways that we can grow and create. Um, where do you
Yeah.
find your inspiration for the episodes that you come up with?
I love that question because I think I get it from everywhere. So sometimes it's just I'm talking to friends in the moment or I'm chatting with someone on Instagram and they'll say something and I'm like, I wonder if many people think about that. Or I'll do a story. Like yesterday, I just did a rant on step siblings and something they were saying about my podcast. And actually, a friend of mine, she texted me and she's like, oh my God, you should do a podcast about this because you saying that, reminded me that I have actually heard a lot of these stories. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast. And from that same rant, another podcaster messaged me and she's like, hey, I'm actually going to do a story on like the black and white sheep of the family and I'd love you
Mm.
to participate. And I'm like, sure, I'm down. So really it's just from like everyday things that happen to me or things that someone says and I'm like, oh, that could be a good podcast episode.
So you're talking about the black sheep and the white sheep. Were you the black sheep in your family?
Yeah, my extended family thinks I'm the black sheep. They don't understand what I'm doing. They're like, oh my God, you're 26, you're still single, you're like traveling the world, you're like doing this online thing, still not making money because I'm a podcast coach. It's still, I haven't cracked the whole thing. I've had to do a lot
Mm.
of inner work. And so they're like, oh, you're not doing anything. Like, what? You're just doing content. You're just doing like podcast episodes. Like, what is that? So yeah, my whole extended family thinks I'm a bit nuts. My mom and dad, they're kind of like, well, we don't get it, but like you do you and we'll see what happens. But like my extended family is like, what the hell is this girl doing?
Right.
So yeah, always been the black sheep.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that point of, this sort of this grind as content creators, whatever you want to call us on the internet. But it's the only kind of historical sort, like, because I'm a historian, I love all that stuff. I'm a geek. But I liken it to the gold rush. You know, we
Hmm.
hear about gold. The internet is this new wave of a gold rush. We hear about, in San Francisco, there's gold. So everybody goes there in the search of gold, these dreams. And there's people that are ripping them off, like they're charging $10 for a cup of water as they're getting in San Francisco. But people will pay for it because they think they're going to find, $1 million. And the internet's like this. People are taking advantage of young entrepreneurs such as ourselves.
Yeah.
Pay $100 for Zoom and XYZ. But it is the same. We have these ambitions, but not everybody's going to make it, right? Especially when there's like millions of us who are kind of doing it. So we have to do things. We have to find our niche and really work towards that to make it in this unprecedented time of, like I say, it's like a gold rush, you know, and not everybody's going to find gold.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of people don't really get that because we're still like entrepreneurship really just boomed in the past couple of years, right? Like beforehand, I think I was just talking to a friend about this. Like before, when you would think about an entrepreneur, it was this like old 40-year-old, 50-year-old man that
White
like
dude.
started, yes, that started
Yeah.
a company back in the day and then now he's rich. So you think of entrepreneurs as that, and everyone else would just be like, oh, I'm in corporate or whatever it is, or like I'm a freelancer, and they would be like the weirdos doing freelance. And the past couple of years, it's become kind of a boom of like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. What do you do? Oh, I'm a coach. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. But
Mhm.
there's still the people that think, oh, the only way to make it is if you're in corporate, right? And so I think add podcasting into the mix and it's like, well, yeah, there are these celebrities that are making money, but like you're not going to make money, you know? So
Right.
people are still pretty skeptical about those things.
So what would you say your, because I did see the one episode, I didn't get a chance to listen to it, but it was pretty sure you don't do this when you're podcasting. So what would you say your niche is? Are you a podcast coach, or are you like, what is your sort of your stake in this internet gold rush?
Yeah, so I'm trying to find the happy balance between being like a podcast personality, because that's really what I want to do, and like a
Mm,
speaker and all of those things, but at the same time, make money, helping people actually do this for a living, right? Because I honestly do believe everyone should have a podcast. Maybe not like the entire world, because that would not be viable. But
right.
if you think about it compared to Instagram, like there's every single person on the planet, give or take a little bit, that has an Instagram, right?
Hmm.
So why isn't podcasting kind of the same? It's the same thing, like you're sharing content, you're sharing pictures, but in this case, you're kind of like sharing a diary with the world, right? So I'm of the belief that everyone, or at least a big part of the world, should have a podcast. So I'm trying to merge both personalities. Like I'm the doing, but I'm also behind the scenes helping people do the doing. So it's like finding this happy middle.
You know, like Sabrina, that's such an interesting point, and I apologize if I don't flesh out this idea properly. But you're saying words to the effect of, we all have something to share. This is what I'm hearing. We all have
Mhm.
something to share. We all need to share it. And then you got to think about the repercussions of that. You know, 1% of the world has all the money, all the power. You know, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, all these rich assholes. So the problem with that is, if everybody's doing it, then really the way things are distributed is going to be completely revolutionized as well. You know, the way I'm getting information is no longer from the blockbuster films that I'm supposed to go see. It's whatever content it is that I want to indulge myself in. And there go, it's kind of, there's almost this, dare I say, this kind of Marxist sort of milieu around it, that everybody's kind of getting this opportunity. And the hope is that the playing field will be kind of leveled out. But I
Mhm.
wonder if that's really going to be the outcome, because it also does seem that, you know, with COVID, the rich have just gotten richer, right? So what are your thoughts with that
I
poorly
think
fleshed out idea?
I think that's definitely an interesting concept. You have to also consider the things that not everyone is going to do it for business, right?
Right.
Like the same thing with Instagram. People, and I love to mix it and I love to say that example because Instagram is like the one example that's kind of like where podcasting is right now when Instagram was at the beginning. I feel
Mm,
like that's where we're all going towards because you hear of a lot of people just wanting to talk about themselves, launch podcasts, or do
right.
those things. But at the beginning, there was just these bunch of people that were like, I'm going to open an Instagram and let's see what happens. They weren't thinking about business. They were just thinking about like, I want to share, my art, or I want to share like what I do every day with my friends. That's kind of the same thing, right? You have to think not everyone's going to make it a business. A lot of people are just like, well, I want to do a hobby of this. Like,
Right.
I want to have a diary. I heard the other day a guy that was talking, he was giving an interview and he's like, I'm launching a podcast literally for my son. So I'm going to be talking about like my stories, my grandparents' stories, my parents and everything so that it lives for prosperity. And like when my son grows up and he doesn't have those people in his life, he can still hear those stories. And I'm like, wow, that's beautiful. So, there's different ways of taking podcasting that doesn't necessarily have to mean I'm going to spend hundreds of $1,000s a year and make it a business, right?
Right.
It can just be this like fun thing of I'm just going to go online, share my story and whatever. If someone, connects with it, great. Like with blogs.
Yeah. But like, this is what I love about it is I've always enjoyed conversation, and learning ideas and sharing ideas, but hearing them, like I've always loved being a student. Like I said, I'm a geek. And, if I can make that what I do for a living, it's like, dude, why not? And I always kind of make the joke of like, there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be people that are like, why are you doing that? That's so stupid. Well, why are you working in, a sawmill for 40 hours a week? Have you ever thought about that? Oh, because I got job security. Well, who cares, man? Do what you want to do. I tell the kids that I work with, I'm the most uncool person they've ever met because I do what I like to do. I wear Lion King shirts all the time, right? Don't try and be cool. You will fuck up your life if you just try and be cool. Be yourself. That's
Yeah.
my message for kids. As a registered counselor, I don't say you're going to fuck up your life to children, by the way. Yeah.
That's just for the podcast. You
Yeah.
don't you don't curse in front of children. Nobody curse in front of
Actually,
children, you guys.
sometimes I do because kids tell me heavy things and I'm like, you know what, man, that would make you feel pissed off. And they're like, yeah, it does. What's lacking in life, I think, is authenticity and just being real. Like
Oh
we're
yeah.
so worried about hurting each other's feelings. Like I said beforehand, I was like, Sabrina, don't worry about hurting my feelings. Just be real. There's so much pretense of we see feedback as criticism, as an assault on our character. But if we want to get better, we have to take feedback. That's the only way that we grow. So now where was I going with that rant? My apologies. Yeah. But really it comes down to we have to be real. And when you're real with kids or with adults,
Yeah.
your life just becomes so much better. But when you're fake and you have pretense and you're hanging around with people you don't want to hang around, guess what? You start to feel miserable, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I've been that. I've been the type of person that's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna post like highlight reels of my life on
Mm.
Instagram. I'm just gonna show you guys traveling and do this and that, and like I'm super happy, ha ha ha." And in the background, I'd be, I don't know, crying because I broke up with someone, or like crying because the latest dude I was talking to ghosted me. But I would be like, "I'm fine. Life is fine. Like I'm living it up in Paris." And then, when I started my podcast and I started talking about all these things, people were like, wow, I always thought you had the perfect life. And I'm like, lol, nope, not even close.
Right. Well, so yeah, you moved to Paris, and I'm sorry, but instantaneously what comes to mind is a show I haven't seen, but Emily in Paris,
Oh my God.
right?
Yeah.
Now that show, I hear it's kind of like Sex in the City or whatever. But is that the reality? Is that the life that you were living, or not at all?
I mean, to an extent, because I was working in fashion. So I moved
Right.
over there to study fashion, and then I was going to fashion shows, working behind the scenes, talked to a lot of models, guys and girls. So, I got to see
Nice.
hot boys on the daily, but also really nice clothes and meet designers and party. And, obviously I worked out a lot, so I looked good. So I got to go
Mm,
to these clubs for free with promoters where I would get free tables
right.
and service and drink and all of these things. So in a way, I was living it up, but at the same time, I was just like in this kind of toxic environment of not necessarily using people, but I would say, oh my God, this person has like contacts in the club. Like, I'm going to go
Mm,
talk to them because then I can go out. Or like, oh, this person knows all the cool people. Like, let's hang out and talk about just random stuff, but never actually go deep. So in a way, I was living the Emily in Paris lifestyle, but in a way, I also wasn't because, I mean, at least she had genuine fun, right?
right. So, well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of jewels in what you're saying here. I mean, it sounds like there's kind of this social currency, and it can actually be almost existentially robbing. We can have a lot of clout. I don't even know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
a lot of friends or whatever, but they're not necessarily real friends. And as I'm getting
Yeah.
older, I think you're younger than me. I think you're 26, you mentioned.
Yeah.
as you get older, you realize, okay, who do I really want in my circle? Like, is this person making me a better person? Because I can tell you from experience, I used to have a lot of friends, but I don't anymore. You know,
Yeah.
I was having a good time. I was living the high life. And don't get me wrong, it was a lot of fun. But, you know, I don't know if it was nourishing of the spirit.
Yeah, it comes with a price, right? Like
Right.
it's you have all this fun, you get these things for free, you go party, you go live it up, but at the same time, it's like this kind of cycle where
Mm,
you have to keep doing it because the minute you stop, you're like, well, shit, my life doesn't look like I want it to look like, right? And if you
right.
don't stop and you continue, you're just like, woohoo, life is fun. I'm distracting myself. Everything's amazing.
Yeah. I liken it to you ever see the horses and they have the
Yes.
little blinders on? Like now I
Yes.
get that expression. If I just look straight ahead, everything's going to be great. Well, that's just one aspect of your life, you know, like,
Yeah.
and with COVID, I know it's been very difficult for a lot of people, but
Mhm.
I have seen it as an opportunity to kind of open my eyes, reevaluate what I'm doing and ask myself, is that what I want to be doing? So what have you gotten out of COVID?
Oh my God, what have I not gotten? I feel like
Yeah, yeah,
last year and this year continues to be crazy. I've unlearned and learned so many things, let go so many people from my life. And I guess like toxic behaviors that I didn't even know I still had because, like you mentioned, it was the year where everyone was still, right?
mm,
So in Europe, you can travel fairly easily because things are cheap, or at least they used to be. I don't know how it's going to look like now. Hope
mm,
doesn't, get expensive. But you could just book a flight for like 30 euros and go to Poland for a weekend.
right.
Or, take a train as well with the discounts or sales or whatever and go to the south of France for a weekend. Chill, come back. So it was really nice to go traveling and all of those things. But people were in this constant state of go, go, go that no one really stopped to think, wait, is like this what I want from my life? Is this where I want to be? What do I want to be doing? Am I happy? Have I dealt with like past issues, relationships, friendships, or whatever it is? And I think it just slowed everyone down to the point where they're like, well, shit.
Yeah.
My life wasn't as amazing as I thought, and that happened to me. I had a pretty hard year. I started my business. I was doing branding, realized I fucking hated it, but it was what I was thought, like what I thought I was good at, and I was good at it. It wasn't that I wasn't good at it, but I just realized one day I was like, I despise what I'm doing. Why am I doing this still? I despise it. Not making money, and I'm still putting hours and hours, and like I would have a weekly meltdown of I suck, my life sucks, why am I doing this? Back up to yes, this is fun, I'm my own boss, to this sucks. So it was kind of this moment where I was like, wait, what do you really want to do, Sabrina? Like, stop and think for a second. Don't care about what you studied because obviously that is also a factor that influences people, right? What did you study? Oh, you have to work in what you studied.
Right.
And even though we see these teachers, because I had a lot of teachers in the university that they were like, I studied art or like, I don't even know, psychology, and now I'm in fashion. Like you see these examples, but it isn't until it happens to you that you're like, do I even have to use my degree, or does it just like a rite of passage or something? And so that was also a thing because when I started the whole podcasting thing, I knew shit about podcasting. Like I could not even tell you how Audition worked, Audacity. I was just like, cool, sound waves. That's like a nice little thing to look at. But what does it do? I have no idea. Not the slightest clue about podcasting. And when I started, I was like, oh my God, I actually love this. Can I
Mm,
do this though? Because I feel like I'm just like an amateur beginner, whatever it is. And then when I let go of all of that and I was like, who cares? You're a couple of steps ahead of people. People are already asking you, just try and see what happens and do it. I was super happy. I was like, oh my God, this is actually working. Like, I feel really good. But that's because I let go of, oh, I studied communications and fashion. Like, I have to work in fashion, right?
right. Well, and I think you mentioned that in one of your episodes, you're talking about education and like I love science, but I'm an idiot. So, trying to learn science in school, I was like, and it's like, you have to be smart. You have to be smart in order to do this. And math, I
Yeah.
love math, but and until I was like in grade 6, I didn't know how to do multiplication times tables. I still don't. I still have to look at like, the analog clocks. I still
Yeah.
have to look and be like, shit, is it like, is 8 o'clock almost over, or is it just starting? You know, but I'm not an idiot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you have passion in something, that should be your key to doing it, right? Not because it's some weird elitist thing like, well, you need to be an A student in order to become a doctor, right? What if you're passionate and you have a willingness to learn? Why can't that be the entry? Well, that, and obviously you need a lot of money to become a doctor, right? That's another subject. But anyways, why
Yeah.
can't that be the key to the door, right? And
Yeah.
then, and furthermore, I look at, Instagram and stuff, and the algorithm, I've totally fucked with the algorithm, right? I think it thinks I'm like a 44-year-old, uh, you know, African American woman from Chicago or something like that, or that mixed with like a New York stock exchange investor, right? Because I get all this stuff about Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, and it's like, if you want to be this person, this is what you have to do. And it's like, well, hold on, what if I don't want to be anything like those people? And then I
Yeah.
get other stuff, which is like, hey, that's actually more of what I'm into, like all this different. I see myself as a kind of left-leaning person, and it's pulling me in this other direction. And I guess it just brings it back to, who are we really? And that's the longest setup to the question that I wanted to ask you is, what is it that you want for your life?
Oh my God, that's a hard question to answer. I think the easiest way for me to start is since I was a kid, don't ask me why, I've always wanted to be famous in some sort of way.
Right.
When I was like 8, I thought I wanted to be like the next Victoria's Secret model. Again, don't ask me why, I have no idea. I just love like the little wings. Didn't think anything beyond that. I was just like, I want to be them. I want to go strut my stuff and be recognized. I thought modeling was like the best thing ever. Once I worked with models, I was like, shit, people treat them really poorly. I do not want to be that. Thank God I wasn't there. But that's what I thought. And then
Right.
afterwards, I was like, no, I want to be a famous painter. And then I was like, no, I want to be like this famous agency owner. And I'm like, well, maybe I want to be a famous podcaster or speaker, but it's always been this kind of thing. Maybe not famous in the sense of like, I want to be Jennifer Aniston, but like have recognition, right?
Yeah.
Have maybe my story in not newspaper, but like magazines or people recognizing and saying, wow, I want to be like that person because she followed her dreams. Or like, oh, I want to, be bold and dare to do what I want, like this person who actually made it. So I think that's the basic essence of what I want. What it is with what I'm going to achieve it, I have no idea. Currently it's podcasting. Maybe in a year it's like something entirely different. But the goal is I want to kind of like inspire and people to aspire to maybe not be me, but do things the way I've done them.
It sounds like now, we're there's a parallel here, because when I was young, I always wanted to be an actor when I grew up, and much to the chagrin of my parents, because I pretend I was in movies and like and action movies, of course. But I think yes, fame would be great, but it's almost like, what do we do with fame? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
because fame is actually, you look at it, and if you don't know who you are and you become famous, it looks like it's a pretty dangerous fucking place to be, right? To
Yeah.
not know who you are and become famous, and then you're trying to examine that. I mean, just look at the Biebs, right? He had a lot of trouble
Yeah.
transitioning from, being a kid to where he is now. And I think that would be psychologically tumultuous for anybody, right? Is, uh, it's Sunday right now. If I go to the store in my sweatpants and a sweatshirt, I'm praying to God I don't run into anybody that I know. But if you're famous, you can't do that, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter where you go. People are going to see you and they're going to be like, oh, and it's kind of like God effect. And I think that can be numbing,
Yeah.
and you can understand why very famous people can become so incredibly disconnected. And so I
Yeah.
guess to me, it's like, yeah, fame's great because we want to be the best at what we do and get paid for what we do. But it's like, what do we do with that? And what you're describing is you want to inspire people, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you having said that and me taking the time to just consider things, I think it's really important what you're saying that you need to know who you are.
Right.
And I'd like to think that's why I'm not famous yet, because I didn't know who I was until now. I'm still kind of discovering it. So who knows? Maybe in a year, people will listen to this podcast episode and that'll be kind of like the catalyst, right? Of like, now
Right.
she's super famous. And then, she was talking about all these things. I don't know what the future holds, but I do believe, like you said, maybe that's the reason why I'm still not famous, or like my podcast hasn't exploded, or like whatever it is, because I'm not ready for it, right?
Right. Well, and the other thing too is that it is nothing without work,
Yeah.
right? These people that are super successful, that is what they do. And as human beings, for we always forget that we're animals, right?
Yeah.
And there's certain things that are instinctual of human beings. We're social creatures, for one. And the idea that, we always kick ourselves in the ass for, it's like, ah, shit, I totally took that for granted. But that's in our nature. It is in our nature to take things for granted,
Yeah.
right? So when we go against our nature and we're thankful for where we are now, that can be incredibly empowering, right? Because I have a younger daughter, and I do get very much consumed by the work that I'm doing because I love it, right? I love it. But at the same time, I don't want to wish it away trying to get to my destination. Like, I want to enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
And if I try to fast forward to the destination, that Adam Sandler movie Click,
Oh my God,
and he
yeah.
fast forwards his life and then he misses out on his kids. I don't want that to be me, but God damn it, if I don't realize that I am on that fence. Like, I was looking at a
Yeah.
picture of my daughter and I was getting man tears because it was like, she's growing up before my eyes, and it's like that, you know?
Yeah.
So now, where was I even going with this? The process of understanding who you are, there's a book I'm reading right now, Malcolm X, and he says that my life has been one of change. And I strongly recommend that book to everybody. The whole book is a constant metamorphosis of who he is and his understanding. But that's who we are.
No.
We're never just there. We never reach enlightenment. It's a constant process.
Yeah.
If you think you've met it, you've done fucked up. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm there. Well, guess what? No, you've exited one cave and you're in the next one. So
Yeah, exactly. We have to remember that. I think it's hard sometimes because you're just like, you see these people, again, these celebrities or these people that you look up to, and you're like, oh my God, they have their lives figured out, right? Like they have everything, they know what they're doing. And then they come out and they're like, yeah, I had no clue what I was doing, but I did it anyway. And you're like, what are you talking about? And so this kind of like, again, it goes down to, well, shit. And that means that I don't have to have my life figured out. I just have to like figure out the next step, right? So I think it's like this constant process.
have you ever met like one of your most adored celebrities?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I once went to a club and I met the cast of Hunger Games, but we didn't really have like this full-on conversation, so I
Mm,
can't really count that. But I did meet for the podcast, I did actually meet a really famous blogger that I looked up to for years. So we chatted and I was like, wow, it's so refreshing to hear your story because I like from the outside looking in, I thought you had everything figured out and life was so glamorous. And she's like, it's taken me years to get here. Like I started
right.
off worse than you, like I was doing 20 things at the same time. I had no clue what a blog was. And yet here we are 10 years later. And I think what we also forget is we know these people afterwards. So we don't
Yes.
see the beginning, right? For me, I saw her when she was already famous and I started following her. And when I interviewed her, she had been at it for 10 years. So obviously I was looking at her from the fact of like, oh my God, she has all of these things. She has 300,000 followers. I want to be her. But then I never stopped to think, well, yeah, but she started somewhere 10 years ago, right?
What and back to your point, I was looking at, these are the 10 things that Jeff Bezos does. And because the algorithms are like, this is what he's after. And I comment on it and I just say, well, I don't want to be him. I want to be me,
Yeah.
you know? And there's this idea of, I think it's easier to master other people than it is to
yourself.
master ourselves, because we have that example. We're like, yeah, I'm going to do that, but we're not doing ourselves. And when we start doing ourselves, we realize it's a constant molting process.
Yeah.
I once met, have you ever heard of the band Disturbed?
No.
Okay, well, they're sounds very scary, but anyways, they're a heavy metal band, and they were like, I idolized them growing up. And one time I was at this very hoity-toity restaurant with my wife in Maui called Mama's Fish House, and we're having a wonderful dinner together, her and I. And this guy sits down beside us, this bald guy, and I look at him, and I'm like, oh, like this. It was the lead singer of Disturbed, of the band. And the guy was like, he was sitting at the bar, and he was with his wife, and he's very human. And he got a phone call, and this is a very, like I say, very expensive restaurant. And here I am, I'm sitting at the bar because I can't get a table. Well, he's sitting at the bar because he can't get a table. And he's on the phone. And he's like, apparently nobody knows who a modern rock star is, right? To his buddy on the phone. And I'm looking, and I'm like, I know who you are. So I walk up to him after, and my wife's like, just whatever you do, don't fanboy him. And she's like, I'm going to go to the washroom. So I walk up to David Draymond, and I'm like, hey, man, I just want to say your music has changed my life. And I don't want to interrupt your nice dinner here, but I just want to say thank you. And he was like, thank you, brother. Like, he just put his hand on my arm, and like, because there's this God effect when we see our idols, right? We kind of shirk to them. And he treated me like an equal. And his wife's like, oh, you guys got to get a picture. And anyways, it was such a changing moment in my perception that everybody is just a human being.
Yeah.
Right? Across the spectrum of color, money, all that, we all share in common, the fact that we can raise children, and that we one day have to pass. We die. So we have to live our lives. And
Yeah,
it
for
was
sure.
it was an eye-opening moment for me. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I can relate to that, especially in podcasting, when you reach out to people that maybe have double, triple, quadruple your following,
Right.
a lot of people, they're like, oh my God, how do you do that? Like they ask me, right? They're like, oh my God, you've had all these people on your show. How do you do it? And I'm like, I literally just message them like if they're a normal person. And I'm
Yeah.
like, hi, I love you. Do you want to come and talk about this on my show? And 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, yeah, I do. And so
Yeah.
people are like, what do you mean you just messaged them? And I'm like, I literally grabbed my phone, sent them a voice message, and I was like, hey, how are you doing? I've been following you for a while. Want to come on my show? And they're all like, oh my God, this is refreshing. Yes. And everyone's minds is just like, boom, they're
Right.
like, how the hell? Like, that's like mind blowing. And I'm like, I'm just talking to people.
Right. So would you say then, like, have you always been a confident person, or is this something that you've discovered in recent years? This ability of, I'm just going to go for it.
I was, but I think before I faked it. And then now I
Mm,
actually am. Because I've
right.
always been this type of person, and I think it's because of my parents or whatever. I don't actually know. But they always taught me, whoever you meet, they're just people, right? Doesn't matter if you meet like the CEO of whatever, the richest person in the world, just like go up to them, talk to them, and everything's fine. So before I would be like super nervous about it, but I would still follow and I'd be like, okay, Sabrina, these are just people. Go up to them, whatever, it's going to be fine, but I would always be awkward about it. And now I genuinely don't care. I'm like, screw that. Like, there's just people, if they say no, well, whatever, they're busy. Like, it's not going to affect me. So it's been in recent years that I've actually become truly confident. Still
Mm,
have a lot of work to do with that. I'm not always 100% confident, but I'm getting there. But yeah, like you mentioned, it's like the inner work. It's like figuring out who you are, figuring out, why you're not confident, what's bothering you, and all of these things. So it's a little work in progress.
how do you, because as we both know, you send out lots of emails to people hoping to get them on. How do you experience rejection in this industry?
I used to take it really hard.
Hmm.
Like, when I would message someone and they wouldn't respond. And then afterwards, I was just like, you know what? It's if like it's meant to be, it's gonna be. Like if they're meant to say yes, then they're gonna say yes. And then I don't lose anything by just asking because I can win actually more. And this is actually a recent experience which has happened to me, which was like right on the nail. So I follow this influencer. Her name is Tova Lee. She's like an author. She wrote a book called Fucked at 40, which is hilarious, about her life story and like her marriage and all of it. And she hosts, I think, a weekly Facebook Live where she encourages people to send like their cringiest dating stories or like the worst thing they've ever done to people or whatever it is. And so I participated, I think it was like a couple of months ago. And I recently got an email that was saying, oh, your story has been selected to be a part of like a testimonial or whatever it is for her upcoming book. We need a couple of details from you to finalize it. Are you okay with it? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm perfectly fine. Like, go, like my 5 seconds of fame, right? Like, I'm in a book.
Yeah.
And so I just sat there before I responded and I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if she comes on my show? And then I was like, you know what? I'm already speaking to this person. I have this contact who's telling me to send me their name and to send them my name and my city. I'm just going to shoot my shot. And I messaged and I was like, hey, I'm wondering if you would like, if Tova would ever come on my show. I know she's really famous, but like, I think her story would be amazing. And at first I got a message saying, oh, it's not with me because I'm just her assistant, but I will send you her PR contact so you can talk to her. And I was like, great, this doesn't sound good, but like, who cares? I'm just going to shoot my shot. I did. And then the first message I got was, can you tell me more about your show and statistics? And I was like, shit,
Right.
don't have enough downloads. She's probably going to say no. And I said, okay, Sabrina, let's flip it. Flip it as, you have to start somewhere. I know I might not have the downloads yet, but I will get there. I believe in this. And to my surprise, she was like, yeah, we talked to her and she's so in. And I interviewed her last week and I was like, holy shit, I literally
Nice.
interviewed this person that I've been reading their book and everything because I actually tried. And so
Right.
that was just kind of like a reminder of me to be like, just shoot your shot. You never
Mm-hmm.
know, right? Like, you never know. You hear all of these stories of these people meeting people because they message, or like these stories of normal people messaging celebrities and then they're married. And you're like, well, they shot their shot, right? They
Yeah.
tried.
I love that. I'm going to borrow that and quote you, the shoot your shot. Right.
Yeah. Oh my God. And definitely do try it. It works sometimes. Sometimes it won't, but in the end, like, it's
Well,
for a reason.
I'm at the point in my life where it's like, I, I've been given so many wonderful lessons in this last year, and there's a good friend in my life who he's taught me the importance of honesty. And like you say, like just be honest. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Obviously, don't be an asshole, but just like, no, I don't want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
I'll never forget. Like, I have the most amazing partner in the world, and she wanted to go and see some friends today, and she's like, yeah, do you want to go do this? I'm like, well, you can do that, but I don't really want to. And it's like, hey, I'm honest, and that's why, we will stay together a lot longer, is because I'm being honest, and what's the worst that
Yeah.
could happen? Somebody could be like, oh, well, you're a piece of shit and I never want to see you again. Or thank you for telling me the truth, right?
Yeah.
Either way, you're sculpting who you want into your life by being real, right? And that's where the whole, let's stop being so influenced by the people that we have as status and have the people that we want around us. And like you're saying, Togo,
Toga. Yeah.
Toga, she's somebody you want in your corner,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then also, a thing to remember is it's never no forever.
Right.
It's maybe no for now, right? Like maybe you grow your podcast or maybe something else happens and then down the road you have the opportunity again and then they'll say yeah. So for me, it's never a no, it's never going to happen, but it's okay, not right now. I'll try again, like maybe later down the road or like other circumstances, right?
And on that too is, I used to have I still have friends, and they're not the most punctual, and neither am I, which is fine. That just seems to be what millennials do, is, oh yeah, I'll be right over. And it's like, can you just please be specific? But anyways,
Yeah.
I'll be right over. So you're 2 hours late? I don't understand. Anyways, I always have something that I can be doing, so I'm not frivolously waiting for somebody. Like, I'll have a book, or I'll
Yeah.
have something that I can do on my phone, but I'm never at someone's mercy, right? And kind of like what you're saying is, if it's not right now, you're doing something in the meantime. You're not waiting around for that moment. You're going to do other things while that's, in the back.
Yeah.
Now, we never even got to talk about
I was
COVID-19 yet.
about to say that. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So what was that like living in France during COVID? You're away from your family and this scary thing develops. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Oh my God, it was crazy. So I was lucky enough that my mom had initially planned to visit me, and it literally just sounded like a movie, right? Like I went to Poland, because I still remember I went to Poland with a friend of mine, which we were all at the point where like, oh, COVID is just like a flu, nothing's gonna happen. Yeah, they're closed in China, but like it's still not here in Europe. Everything's fine. Came back from Poland. A week later, my mom was flying into Paris because it was her time to visit me. So she comes, and my dad was supposed to join us a week later. And then 3 days later, full lockdown happens in France. They're like, no one else can come in, no one else can come out. There's a curfew, you can't leave your house. And if you leave, it's maximum 1 kilometer, and you stay for 1 hour outside with masks and all of that. And we were just like, what the hell? Like, my dad could not come over. My mom could not leave. She was stuck there for about 2 months in my
So they're
apartment.
in Paris, but they
My mom
can't
was
see
in
you.
Paris. No, my
Oh,
mom was in Paris with me, but my dad
right,
was flying out a couple of days later. And then in the middle of that, they're like, no, no one comes in, no one comes
right,
out.
right.
No flights, everything was completely shut down. And my dad was like, well, I guess you guys are going to stay over there then. And my mom was like, oh my God, what are you talking about? Like, there has to be a way to leave. And I'm like, Mom, literally, like, you can't even leave your house. How do you
Wow.
want to leave the country, right?
So your mom was stuck. This is when your mom was with you for 2 months.
Yeah, so my mom was stuck there with me.
Wow.
I'm grateful for that, even though she drove me a bit crazy, but I'm grateful I wasn't completely alone, because
Right.
I would have gone mad. Like, I would have gone bonkers. I hadn't done all of the inner work at that point, and I really do think I wouldn't have been able to just like deal with things by myself.
Mm,
But having her there, we still joked around. We had Netflix. I was busy launching my business podcast. But then we had the chats. I had someone to go to the grocery store with. Our once every 2 week trip to the grocery store because we didn't want to risk it and get COVID.
right.
Or someone to talk to and not feel alone. Because even if you do connect with people on Zoom or have interviews or whatever, it's not the same as having someone there, like touching
Yes.
your arm or
Yep.
hugging you or whatever. So I'm very grateful she was there, but it was definitely hard.
Mm.
That's why it kind of came over before the second wave hit, because she left after that. She left and I stayed over the summer. I was like, you know what? I don't want to go back. I don't want to get you guys sick. I'm staying over here. Like, it's at least a bit controlled. We're free to go out. Yes, wearing masks, but like life is kind of back to normal. And it did. It did get back to normal for a while. So we had the entire summer as a country to kind of like travel within France and like go to the Seine River and drink wine with friends and everything. And we all, I guess, exaggerated it a bit, which caused the second wave to happen.
Right. Well, that's like
Um,
here too, in
yeah, we
Canada.
kind of
Yeah.
like lost the whole, oh my God, it's COVID. We were just so happy to be able to be out and go to
Yeah.
restaurants and like chill and hang out that we were all like, fuck COVID, it doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore.
Yeah.
Everything's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
And then October happens, and I started seeing the signs that they were going to a second lockdown.
Right.
And so I was torn between, do I stay and risk it, or do I go visit my parents in Mexico where I'm not going to be alone? And so I struggled with that decision for a while until I thought, you know what, screw it. I feel like something's going to happen. And if I don't go now, I might not be able to go for Christmas. And then that's going to be truly heartbreaking for me. So I just decided to go. And I came here since October. I'm in Mexico currently. And now I'm stuck for the second time been in Mexico.
But you're stuck with your family.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
which is not that bad. And we have a house here, so at least I have like a little garden where I can just chill there. Or it's not like we're sharing a room, right? It's like if I want to be alone, I'll just lock myself in my room for an
Right.
hour or whatever it is, and no one can bother me. Whereas there, it's like we're sharing the same space. Like I would have to lock myself in the bathroom to be alone, right?
Because it's how big was your apartment in
So it's 2 rooms. It's the living room, kitchen, and then the bedroom.
Wow.
But,
So
I was
probably
working,
900 square feet or something like that.
I don't know how much that is, but it's 28 square meters.
Yes. Yeah. So
It's like, it's tiny.
yeah, cozy.
And yes, I mean, it's nice for one person, but
Yes.
obviously 2 people, it gets a bit crowded.
And
And
that second
so,
person being your mother, of course.
Yes. And so I was working in the living room, but if she had to cook, like she had to be quiet or she had to lock
Right.
herself in my bedroom when I was recording a podcast. And so it started getting a little bit tedious, which after that I was like, screw that. I never want to have a 1 bedroom apartment. Whatever it is, I do like 2 bedrooms and up because I need my space. Like
Yeah.
I need a little office or I need something. This is not working. And yeah, I've been here ever since. Don't know when I'm going back.
Mm.
It's a bit I don't know, like I'm not too torn about it because I was already thinking of leaving Paris, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, okay, I didn't come prepared. I don't have my stuff. I'm running out of like my cosmetics. How do I get them? They don't have those options here, like my comforts. I'm just like,
Right.
I feel like I'm a tourist here. I'm not even in like residing in my own house.
Well, yeah, I mean, like that is a pretty interesting way to think about it. I mean, because well, how long were you living in Paris for?
It's been 7 years now.
Wow. So really,
Yeah.
that is home,
Yeah,
I
yeah, like
guess.
I'd come back to Mexico once every year,
Yeah.
twice, once or twice every year for about a month and a half for like Christmas or the summer, and then I'd go back. So I was always just staying here for the moment. I'd visit my uncles, my grandma, and everyone, and then I'd go back. And then now I'm kind of like back in my, let's call it childhood home,
Right.
living with my parents, and I'm like, great, like I don't have my stuff. Like I have some clothes in my closet, but we talked about it. I feel like I've been wearing the same thing. I don't have like nice backgrounds. I'm constantly asking my mom to like shoot the stuff for me or like take pictures. So
I
it's
love the
nice.
background you have right now with this
It's
wonderful
fake.
plant. Oh yeah, no, yeah,
I'm currently inside my parents' storage closet, which is
wonderful.
my recording studio since I came here.
Well, yeah, wonderful. Well, I was doing there was that house party app, and I
Yeah.
was, I was stuck at home with my young daughter and my wife, and I was in the boiler room and I was having, beers and stuff with the people, but they're like, "Are you in the fucking boiler room of your house, Rob?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I can be loud in here, right? Because I can be a little bit boisterous from time to time."
Yeah.
So now the interesting thing about this, I mean, I feel like there's a story here. There's a lot of good content that, years from now, 10 years from now, you're going to look back at these 2 months that you were stuck, pent up with your mother, you know,
Yeah.
and the assisted evolution that came with that, right? Like I can only imagine that must have brought you and your mother closer together.
It did, but it also had us fighting a lot because obviously when you're with a person full
Yeah,
24/7 in a small space, you get to know everything even
right.
more. And then you get annoyed by the little things they do. So my mom's a perfectionist and she's like a clean freak, but I say that endearingly. She's
Right.
always like rearranging things and like everything has to be perfect. I have my own way because I've been living alone for 8 years. And so it was like, this has to go that way. And I'd be like, but that's not my way. And so
Right.
we'd have this constant discussion of like, no, it looks prettier this way. And I'm like, but that's not functional. So it was fun, but it was also stressful. And yeah,
And to your point, I mean, you guys have a big blowout. Where are you going to go?
exactly.
I'm just going to go in the closet and look in the corner, and then shut the closet door behind me. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I've also heard that people with really big houses and stuff, sometimes, I don't have the stat to back this up. I've only heard this, but the stats that there's a higher chance for divorces in bigger homes
Really?
because you can just, yeah, Google that, look into that. Don't take my word for it. But there's a correlation because you can just go in your room and just whatever, not have to face the confrontation versus
I
in
can see
smaller
that.
spaces, it's like, okay, well, I can only sit and stew, in my bedroom for so long before it's like, okay, let's try and figure this out. Right.
Especially if they have to come back and sleep in the bedroom, right? It's
Yeah,
not like you can lock them out for a day or something.
exactly. Yeah. And communication is so huge. And
Yeah.
I think that's been one big wake up call of this, COVID thing is who do we want to be spending our time communicating with? Right.
Yeah.
And the ones that we live with, we're forced to be with them. Right. Like I've also heard that from COVID, a lot of people, now they're actually living with each other. They're just like,
Yeah.
fuck, I hate this person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I'm exaggerating for dramatic effect, but you really get to know the person when you turn off the distractions and you're like, yeah, let's talk.
Yeah, 100%. I was hearing that as well. There's a lot of people that either got really close together and they're like, oh, perfect couple or a family or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that were like, shit, we never spent more than, I don't know, 3 hours a day together and now we hate each other. So after
Yeah.
COVID's done, like, bye to each other.
Yeah. And
It's
it's like,
interesting.
what a precarious place. Yeah, we'll go for a divorce when this thing is supposedly all over, which could be in 3 years. It's
Yeah.
like, well, who knows? You might figure it out by then too, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh my God, COVID's been crazy.
so what are your hopes for the future with this whole thing?
Great question. I think I would love for people to be more aware of what we're doing to the planet.
Hmm.
So that's one thing, because you read all of these things where oceans were cleaner and like rivers were cleaner when no
Right.
one could go out and skies were bluer and all of those things. And now people are slowly going back to it. So that's one thing. And the other is really, I guess, for people not to lose sight of who we are, because I think a lot of people have learned that lesson in the past year, either being alone or like forced to stop going out and do all of these things and really look within. So I hope people don't lose sight of that and just continue on the journey and not just be like, let's go back to our old habits. Let's
Right.
all go get drunk every single day at
Right.
clubs and like party and everything's fine.
Yeah. Well, and you've mentioned that you're sort of on the fence too. When you're able to go back to France, to Paris, do you think you're going to stay, or do you think you're like, you know what? I think it's time I go elsewhere.
I don't know. I'm still on the fence on that. I
Mm,
really, really want to move to Canada. I've been wanting to do that for a couple of years now. Last year I couldn't apply for the visa I wanted because I didn't have the work experience I needed. I'm hoping now, 1 year in business, I have the experience. I mean, they don't have to check pay slips or anything. They just have to know that it's registered. So fingers crossed. But now I can finally apply. And I guess at this point, I'm just going to leave it up to life. I'm just going to leave it up to, if I meet someone and I end up staying cool. I get the visa and I end up leaving, cool. So I'm just going to be like, I'm going to go through the process, see what happens, and then decide.
I love that. Again, it's kind of to be present in the moment, right? Not to the what's the saying? The best laid plans of mice and men, right? It's
Yeah.
oh, in 5 years I'm going to be married. I'm going to have 2 kids, and then 5 years comes and you're like, shit, right? It's like, don't
Yeah.
set a time limit on things. Just let life kind of let the chips fall where they may, but also, do protect yourself, right? Have some
Yeah.
sense of security.
Yeah. I mean, I'm taking it as a sign that every person I've met in the past couple of months have been either Canadian or related to Canada in some way. So I'm like, hey, maybe it means I have to move. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm meant to go back to Paris,
Mhm.
meet an amazing Canadian man, fall in love there, and stay there. Who knows? I'm just
There,
like, I know Canada has a role to play in it. What it's going to be, I have no idea. We'll figure it out.
well, if you find yourself moving to the west coast of Canada, it'd be great for us to work together. So,
Yes, for sure.
yeah.
I'll definitely hit you up if I'm in Vancouver next time.
Well, Sabrina, I was just looking at the time, and it has simply flown by. We're at 46 minutes, so I'm going to have to whet the appetite of our listeners, and we're going to have you back on again. So, thank you
Yeah, we'll
so
have to
much
come
for your
back.
time.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry I interrupted you, but thank
Oh,
you for having me on here. It's been a great conversation.
did you have any last words for our listeners?
In terms of what? Any specific topic?
Yeah, just anything in general, or I'd be mentioning your podcast. Pretty sure they need to check that out.
Yes, pretty sure you need to check Pretty Sure out. Yeah, so two things. One, definitely go check it out. I do talk a lot about things about my life, about other people. If you don't want to learn from me, learn from my guests. I've had incredible guests on there. They have the most amazing stories. I've had people, that built a business from jail. I've had people that have been Paralympians after like big struggles and those things. So just go check it out. Send me a message if you want. I always respond. And another thing, so by the way, it's Pretty Sure Podcast. So you can just look me up on Instagram at Pretty Sure Podcast or on every platform. Literally, I made sure I'm everywhere. Since I'm not sponsored by anyone yet, you can find me literally anywhere, even in the Indian ones. I don't know the names, but I know I have listeners in India. So yeah, there you go. And the last thing, like a little personal message, is don't be afraid to be who you are, because I know I lived in that for a long time and I'm happy I'm over that. But yeah, just don't be afraid to be who you are.
Awesome. Sabrina, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, it happened very quickly. So I hope we get to speak again soon.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to come back. So just, let me know. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.